Story 1. I started working at a retail store a few months ago. Much of our merchandise is locked in display cases, and employees were expected to sign out and sign back in any key and radio at the beginnings and ends of shifts, respectively. I've been the only person at work who cares about precautions, so I tried to always take the same key every day, in the hopes that no one else was handling it. I signed it out, I signed it back in, day out. One day, at the start of my shift, my key is missing. I checked the log, and it wasn't signed out since I'd last returned it the previous day, which meant someone had just taken it, not signed it out, and never returned it. It hasn't been back since, so it's quite gone. I had previously mentioned to management that the key control system was lacking, and that keys were going missing. No record, no oversight, no apparent concern. Management shrugged with indifference and made a quip about taking employee keys in exchange for work keys. I'm not willing to part with either my house or car key to anyone I don't trust. I don't want other employees handling my own personal keys with their plague rat hands. Management eventually implemented the key exchange, and now comes the malicious compliance. I had a keyring with a bunch of extra keys from old hobby locks that had long since been lost, or keys of otherwise little significance. These keys are on several key rings, on a carabiner. I loaded as many keyrings as I could fit, then I added the biggest padlock I have, then slapped an industrial magnet on the shackle of the lock, then added a lump of wrought iron to the mix to increase the weight to somewhere around 3 pounds. 3 pounds of keys, locks, and just metal. I handed over the pointless keys in exchange for a work key, and the heft was met with at least a Jesus from management. The second day I went to ask for a key. Management looked at my key monstrosity as I approached, said never mind, and gave me a key. No one has been asked for keys since, to my knowledge, and there is now no key control whatsoever. Certain keys are designated management only, but that hasn't stopped anyone from taking those keys. What are employee handbooks? Story 2. Recently, my sister and her husband came to really like Baby Yoda's child in The Mandalorian. I crocheted and made them a Baby Yoda, something my 4-year-old niece liked as well. I ended up making another Baby Yoda in purple, my niece's favorite color specifically for her. Yesterday, I was babysitting my niece, and we went to Walmart to pick up some snacks and ingredients for dinner. My niece insisted on bringing her Baby Yoda with us. It happened fast. While I was picking through bags of spinach, my niece, who was in the shopping cart, began screaming and crying. Despite not having any children yet, I am more than a little of a mama bear and instantly abandoned the spinach to check on her. My niece was halfway out of the cart, still screaming, pointing at a woman who was walking away with a very familiar purple Baby Yoda in her cart, heading towards the registers. I picked up my niece and stormed after this woman, abandoning my shopping cart as she turned into a register. She had put her things on the checkout conveyor belt when I got there, most of her things already scanned, and she was trying to discuss prices for the Baby Yoda. It's not in the best of shape, and the price indicated it was $12.99. Could you give me a discount? I marched over, my sobbing niece in arm, and snatched the Baby Yoda from the surprised clerk who was checking for a tag. The entitled woman screeched as she grabbed at the toy as well. How dare you? I'm buying this for my daughter. She loves purple, and those other ones are all green. This belongs to my niece. I made it for her, I snarled. Liar. You're just angry I got to it first. A manager must have been attracted by the noise of screams because he approached, a less than pleased look on his face. Is something wrong here? The entitled woman pointed at me with her free hand. This woman is trying to take this doll I'm trying to buy for my daughter. I was still trying to keep a grip on the Baby Yoda. I told you I made this. I doubt the Yodas sold here are made from yarn. The manager called security after a moment of trying to mediate, and I was forced to let go of the Yoda to talk to the guard. Luckily, I like to take pictures of my projects that I finish, so it only took a moment for me to pull out my phone and bring up a picture of the Baby Yoda when I had finished it, namely the picture on the link above. We both turned back to the cash register, and my niece began to cry again when we saw the woman was gone, and the manager approached us with a hard look. I realized that those toys are very popular, but you shouldn't try to steal one of a specific color from someone. I held up my phone, picture still up, and saw the man's face drain of color when he saw the toy in an environment that was very much not his store, but the damage was already done. He had sold my niece's toy to the entitled woman, and she had left. Needless to say, I'm never going back to that Walmart, and my niece is still upset about her purple Baby Yoda being stolen. I'm making another one for her currently, one that'll have her name stitched onto the back, so this will never happen again. Update. It took a while, and I was intently focused on finishing the new Baby Yoda for my niece. But I do have an update. Mostly it is disappointing, but there is some good news. I called the police. They were only interested in the fact that the materials cost less than $15 total and didn't intend to follow up. I'm not sure what has happened to the store manager, but I did find the cashier when I went back this past weekend. She had apparently objected to the sale and refused to do it. Both she and the security guard had escalated the situation, and it seems the manager is no longer employed, but I don't know for sure. The best part of the week, I received an anonymous message telling me to go to a shop across the street from the store where Baby Yoda was taken. I went, and there was a sack there, purple Baby Yoda inside. One of the arms had been gnawed off, and the robe was ruined, but I was able to remake and replace the pieces. I'm not sure what happened, but I like to think that the entitled mother became the target of a lot of pressure from family and friends. I'll be finishing a new robe for the new Yoda-child, and then my niece will be getting her 2 toys when I see her next. Story 3. A few years ago, I was meeting 2 friends at the county fair. I was running late due to the traffic. The fair is a pretty big deal around here, so I told them to go ahead without me. When I finally got there, I went to the ticket booth to buy a ride pass. For $10, you could get a wristband allowing you unlimited rides. This was a much better deal than getting single ride tickets which cost $1 each. Except this year, something was strange. Usually you could buy just one wristband no problem. But for some reason the only way to buy them this year was to get 2 at once. Now obviously my 2 friends had bought their wristbands together, so I didn't have a second person to buy one with. I went up to the ticket taker, who looked a lot like a stereotypical entitled person. The short blonde bob, the oversized sunglasses on top of her forehead, the rolls of fat hanging out of her red vest all of the fair workers were wearing. She looked at me and said in the most annoyed voice, "Can I help you?" Yes, I wanted to buy a ride pass, but I don't have a second person to buy it with. Could I just have one wristband? What are you telling me, you have no friends? Did you seriously come to the fair alone? I didn't come alone. It's just my friends already bought wristbands. That's it? You don't have a sibling, cousin, parent, anything? I find that hard to believe. Yeah, of course I do, they're just not here. And you only have 2 friends. Maybe if you had more it wouldn't be a problem. Now go off and make a friend, then you can come back and get a pass. Her attitude really annoyed me, just about as much as this ridiculous new rule. Like if they could sell you 2 passes, then what was the problem with selling one? I get most people don't go to the fair alone, but what if there were an odd amount of people? I really didn't want this annoying ticket taker to have her way, so I did just what she said and decided to make a friend. Standing behind me in the ticket line was a pregnant mom and her daughter, about 8 or 9. I was assuming the mom wasn't going to be riding any rides, and they seemed to be giving in and just getting single ride tickets. That's when I got an idea. I pulled the little girl aside and asked her if she would like to get a ride pass. She said yes, and I got back in line with them. "Did you make a friend yet?" asked the annoyed ticket taker. "I did actually. Me and my new friend here would like to buy a ride pass," I said, smirking. The ticket taker stuttered and tried talking back, but there was nothing she could do. The rule stated that the pass had to be bought by 2 people. It never said that they had to be together or even know each other. The mom and I each paid $10 and took our wristbands. The daughter thanked me and we parted ways. I went to go catch up with my friends, and we spent the rest of the day at the fair. I went back to the fair the next day, but this time with my twin sisters, where I discovered a new rule. The passes only lasted one day, and new ones had to be purchased every day of the fair. This was annoying, but there was nothing I could do. Of course, there was the same angry ticket taker that was there yesterday. My sisters bought their passes together, and I decided to do the same thing I did the previous day, just to spite her. I turned to the person behind me and offered to buy our passes together since he was in a group of 3 people. He said yes, and we went up to the ticket booth. "Me and my new friend here would like to buy a ride pass," I said while looking at her with a big grin. Even more annoyed than last time, she took each of our 10 and gave us wristbands. Of course, she purposefully ripped mine while tearing apart the sheet of bracelets, but it was still so satisfying to beat her at her own game. The next year, the single-person ride passes were back because of complaints from people including me. Turns out, the fair was just trying to make more money by forcing more people to buy the more expensive single-ride tickets. Their plan didn't work because I had found a simple loophole that was used by other people as well. They still had passes for 2 people at a discount, so for my benefit and theirs, I would always find a stranger and go to the booth where that annoying lady was. She would always be absolutely pissed as I said, "Look, here's my new friend, we would like a ride pass." Story 4. I've been working retail for about 8 years now, starting as a cashier when I was 17 and slowly working my way up to assistant manager at our local grocery store. I thought I'd seen it all: customers trying to return food they'd already eaten, people screaming about expired coupons, the usual entitled behavior. But nothing prepared me for what happened last Valentine's Day. I'd been covering the evening shift because our usual night manager called in sick. It was getting close to closing time, probably around 9:15 p.m., when this young woman walked in with 2 kids, a baby that couldn't have been more than 6 months old and a toddler who looked barely old enough to walk. The woman herself looked incredibly young, maybe 16 at most. She had that tired, frazzled look that new mothers get, but there was something else in her eyes that made me keep an eye on her through the security monitors. She went straight to the meat section and grabbed everything for what looked like a nice steak dinner for 2 people. Then she picked up a frozen kids' meal and headed to the wine section. She selected a bottle of red wine that wasn't cheap, probably around $30. When she got to the checkout, our cashier, who's only 19 himself, immediately asked for her identification. The woman just stared at him like he'd asked her to solve advanced calculus. The cashier politely explained that he needed to see some ID for the wine purchase. The woman told him she didn't have it with her right now. He apologized but said he couldn't sell alcohol without seeing identification because it was both store policy and state law. That's when her face started changing. You know that look people get when they're about to lose their minds. Her eyes got wide and her mouth got tight. The woman asked if he was kidding her right now and said she needed the wine. The cashier said he understood but couldn't complete the sale without ID, though she could buy everything else. She demanded to speak to the manager immediately. The poor kid looked over at me with panic in his eyes. I walked over, already knowing this wasn't going to go well. The baby was starting to fuss, and the toddler was getting restless, pulling on items near the checkout lane. I introduced myself as the manager on duty and asked what the problem was. She told me that my employee was refusing to sell her wine even though she was clearly old enough to buy it. I explained that I would also need to see her ID because it wasn't just store policy, but the law effect, and we had to check identification for anyone who appeared to be under 35. That's when she completely lost it. She started yelling about how they had just moved here from 3 states over. Her husband had been driving back and forth all week bringing their stuff, and he was finally done tonight. She had planned this whole Valentine's dinner, and she had misplaced her wallet during the move. I was ruining everything for her. I told her I understood that moving was stressful, but I couldn't sell alcohol without proper identification, and there were no exceptions. She pointed at her kids and asked if I thought she looked like some teenager trying to buy booze illegally. She was a mother, after all. I apologized but explained that being a parent didn't change the law. Without ID, there could be no alcohol sale. I could lose my job, the store could lose its license, and we could face serious fines. The woman was practically shaking with anger. The baby was crying now, and the toddler had started knocking items off the lower shelves. She screamed that this was the most backwards, stupid place she had ever lived, and that we people were impossible. She threw her credit card at the cashier so hard it bounced off his chest. He rang up everything except the wine, and she paid while complaining about how terrible everyone was. I watched when she stormed toward the exit, pushing her cart with one hand and trying to calm the crying baby with the other. She made it about 10 feet from the door when she suddenly stopped. Our bagger, a 16-year-old kid who's been working here for about 6 months, had just picked up the wine bottle to return it to the shelf. That's when she ran back. What happened next was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. She grabbed the bottle right out of the kid's hands, and before anyone could react, she raised it above her head and slammed it down on the floor like she was spiking a football. Glass and wine exploded everywhere, splashing on the bagger's legs and feet. She yelled that now nobody gets the wine and ran out of the store, pushing her cart and dragging the toddler while the baby screamed. The poor bagger just stood there in shock, covered in wine and surrounded by broken glass. I immediately called the police while helping clean up the mess. Luckily, the bagger wasn't hurt, just shaken up and smelling like a winery. I got the woman's license plate number from our security cameras and gave all the information to the officer who responded. After dealing with the police report and supervising the cleanup, we finally locked up about an hour later than usual. I had to drop off some groceries at my mother-in-law's house, which took me in the opposite direction from my usual route home. This path took me past the liquor store on 5th Street. When I drove by, I noticed 2 police cruisers parked outside with their lights flashing. My brother's best friend has been the night manager there for years. He's basically family to us. I got worried and decided to check if everything was okay. I pulled into the parking lot and immediately recognized the car parked near the entrance. It was the same make and model of the woman from the grocery store, and when I got closer, I could see it had the same license plate number I'd just given to the police. A 3rd police cruiser pulled up just when I was getting out of my car. The officer who stepped out was the same one who had taken my report at the grocery store less than an hour earlier. I called out to Officer Johnson, and he recognized me from the grocery store incident. He asked what I was doing there. I explained that my friend managed the liquor store and I had gotten worried when I saw the police cars. Then I pointed out that the car parked there belonged to the woman who had smashed the wine bottle at my store. The officer looked at the car, then back at me, and nodded before heading inside. I sent a quick text to my friend asking him to call me later, then headed home. He called me around midnight with a full story. Apparently, the same woman had shown up at the liquor store about 20 minutes after the grocery store incident. She tried to enter with both children, but in our state, anyone under 21 isn't allowed in liquor stores, no exceptions, not even for babies. My friend had stopped her at the door and explained the law. According to him, she immediately started ranting about the woman at the grocery store who wouldn't sell her wine. When he told her the children couldn't come inside, she completely lost control. My friend told me she started screaming about how she already regretted moving to this backward state, and that she was getting her wine whether he liked it or not. I asked if she had tried to force her way in. He said it was worse than that. She had grabbed one of their wire display racks filled with mini bottles, the ones with about 100 little bottles of various liquors, and just hurled the whole thing to the ground. Glass everywhere, liquor everywhere. That's when he hit the silent alarm. The police arrived within minutes and arrested her for child endangering, theft, vandalism, and destruction of property. They tried to contact her husband, but apparently his phone was dead or turned off. Since there was no one to take the children, Child Protective Services had to come collect them. I found out later that she spent the night in jail and had to post bail the next morning. The total damages between both stores came to over $800, not counting the cleanup time and lost business. She was also banned from both establishments. The husband finally showed up the next day to collect the children from CPS. Apparently, he had no idea what his wife had done and was mortified when he found out. He came to both stores to apologize and offered to pay for the damages, which he did. I heard through the grapevine that they ended up moving back to wherever they came from within a month. The husband had gotten a job transfer here, but after his wife's arrest and the legal troubles, he requested to be transferred back to their previous location. All of this drama, 2 stores worth of property damage, an arrest, and involvement from Child Protective Services, all because someone refused to accept that she needed ID to buy a $30 bottle of wine. Story 5. So this one happened while I was stationed in Yongsan, South Korea as a military police. It was winter, so the temperatures were well below freezing. Think roughly in the low to mid-20s, possibly lower. My partner and I were at the end of our swing shift when we received the call to head to a manned gate in our area. Apparently someone had gotten themselves trapped in one, and we needed to override the terminal. Some background: the manned gates were unmanned booths used to enter the post. It was a process to enter one, but super simple. You had to scan your ID to enter the gate. Then inside the gate you had to scan your fingerprints before you could enter the post. These machines often suffered from user error. Either the user didn't have their card spaced just right for the scanner, or they pressed too hard on the fingerprint console. Also of note, as in military police, we could manually check ID cards at the officer's discretion, but this was not recommended at the time for a number of reasons. One being a counterfeit military ID card ring in the area being busted recently. While en route, our desk sergeant told us a technician would be on his way, again stating how unusual this call was. When we arrived, we found a civilian lady inside the booth with a small line of various individuals forming near the entrance. We explained to the person trapped, as well as the small crowd forming, that we had a technician coming out to inspect the terminal. After a handful of minutes, the technician arrived and inspected the terminal and found nothing wrong. He instructed the lady to exit the gate through the entrance door, but she still tried to force herself through the exit, the one leading into the post. The technician repeated his order to no avail, but I stepped in and asked her to go back through another door, so the technician could work using my command voice. After she exited the booth, the technician explained to me and my partner that he was going to perform a system reboot, which would take 15 minutes. About 3 minutes after I explained to the crowd the issue, I heard the shrill roar of a wild Karen bellow out, "What's taking so long?" I again respectfully respond with, "The technician is working on it. The timer is at 12 minutes. I then hear the reply, "Is that a freaking specialist talking to me like that?" I proceeded to walk to the source of the shrieking and was met by a very irate Marine captain. She starts screaming at me to unlock the neighboring fence to let her in. I couldn't do this for a number of reasons. There was a crowd of civilians forming a line at the booth. While we could manually check the military ID cards, I had a bad gut feeling about checking the civilian IDs due to the aforementioned counterfeit ring being previously busted. My partner and I, who was a native Korean, did our best to redirect the crowd to the other gates, but Captain Karen kept shouting over us, telling the crowd we were just lazy. We did not have the keys or even had authorization to unlock that particular gate. I repeatedly explained this to Captain Karen, but she continually shouted that she gave us permission to unlock it, but only for her. Due to the various circumstances surrounding the gate issue, I proceeded to call our desk sergeant, first over the radio, which allowed him to hear the shrieking of the bloated harpy, and then over my personal phone, not normally allowed, but I needed to speak uninterrupted. While speaking with my desk sergeant, who was an awesome dude, he further iterated that I technically could manually check the IDs, but there was no way for the scans to be in the system. When I went to speak with Captain Karen about the issues once more, she became further irate about how we were incompetent, and she'd personally make sure myself and my partner would lose rank as well as other various humiliations. I finally put her on with Desk Sergeant. He explained to her calmly about the issues, but she shrieked at him that he was just as incompetent as us. He finally got fed up with her and hung up. The rest of the time we were stuck at the gate. A few people got the right idea and went to the other gates, except for the lady who trapped herself, Captain Karen of course, and a handful of other civilians. When the technician finally got the booth back online, Captain Karen proceeded to go into overdrive with how she was going to make sure myself, my partner, and our desk sergeant were going to be stuck doing crap assignments. The trapped lady started speaking up at this point, telling us how she was also going to put in a complaint about how she was trapped and how myself and my partner had been nothing but rude to her due to her predicament. Before I could mention anything to her, the technician spoke up and stated, "Ma'am, there was nothing wrong with this gate. All you had to do was step back outside and rescan your ID, but your dumbness couldn't figure that out." The tech then told us he'd be emailing a report to the Provost Marshal's office to help cover us and left. We proceeded to clear the scene and head back to our office, but were immediately called back to the gate by the Provost Marshal himself. He heard the first call over the radios. He actually had his own radio set up at his home so he could monitor us and could audibly hear Captain Karen's shrieking. When we returned to the gate, the Provost Marshal wanted to hear our side of the story. He'd already spoken to the technician as well as a rundown from our desk sergeant. He had an idea of what happened, but wanted a rundown from us. We explained everything, and he got a bit of a chuckle when we told him that Captain Karen would be at his office in the morning. He said not to worry, and he'd deal with her. We then got off a little later than we would have liked, but hey, we needed to cover our butts with a report. The next morning I was collecting my vehicle for the daily assignments when I could hear the sounds of two Karens clashing. Captain Karen had shown up to trash us, but she ended up meeting our daytime desk sergeant, Staff Sergeant Karen. This particular staff sergeant was pretty well known to be a tough customer, but luckily for me, I was on her good side. I could hear the two roaring in the back, and I feared the building might explode. My partner and I, the same one from the night before, exchanged looks and rushed out to conduct our daily assignment. When we returned after our swing shift, our desk sergeant, the one from the previous night, met us personally while giggling. Apparently Captain Karen caused such an uproar that Provost Marshal stepped in like he said he would. She attempted to slander us, but Provost Marshal put a stop to that quickly. He listed off a number of illegal orders she had stated as well as the lack of professionalism on her part. She tried to protest, but Provost Marshal had already had an ace up his sleeve. You see, Captain Karen wasn't permanently assigned to the Yongsan. Her unit was there for some type of training. Not sure what kind of training though. He was ready to send up paperwork that could have potentially banned her from Yongsan. The rest of the time she was scheduled to be there, but decided to give her a choice. He gave her the option to leave quietly and not overstep her bounds again, or he'd be seeking some legal action. She accepted option A. For the last handful of months I was at Yongsan, we never had any more trouble with Captain Karen. Occasionally we'd bump into Marines here and there, and they'd always laugh about how their commander was nearly booted out of Korea. Stories like this always get blown out of proportion. Apparently Captain Karen was still running her mouth at that point, but I never saw her after that night. Story 6. To be fair on Karen, I think she was having one of those days where life is hard as a racist and nothing is going your way because frankly the rest of us refuse to put up with that kind of troglodyte behavior. In our area, there are no zoning laws, so we have homeowners associations. That way a bar can't be built next door to your dream house. You pay an annual fee and there are amenities like maybe a park and a pool. The homeowners association's contracts with a company for lifeguarding and pool cleaning to avoid liability. Setting: it's a beautiful summer morning in Pool Wonderland. Children laughing and splashing and several lifeguards, including my daughter, sitting on her throne of peace and tranquility. Pool Wonderland has some new rules this summer. Cast. My daughter the lifeguard. Any other lifeguards working that day? Karen, she's lived here forever. Karen's hubby. Karen's 4-year-old son. And an innocent family. No going down the water slide with a child in your lap. No non-swimwear in the pool. If you happen to require a head covering of any kind, it must be swimwear material. This is an important detail for later. Scene 1. Karen, hubby, take our son down the water slide. Her husband, sure thing. Lifeguard atop the slide. Sorry, sir, no children riding in your lap. We do apologize. It's a new rule this year. Hey, no problem. The kid was disappointed, but not an unruly little thing. Karen, what the hell? That's rude. The kid began to cry as I assume this tone signals to him that once again, mommy is gonna lose it. Her husband, it's no big deal. Karen, now addressing the lifeguard. Why can't my son go down the water slide with his dad? The lifeguard explains the rules and Karen doesn't like it, but compiles in a huff. Scene 2. The innocent family shows up and orders pizza. They have a small family birthday party, which was scheduled in advance with tables reserved. Many of the women are wearing what I understand to be Muslim swimwear, appropriate fabric for the pool, and covers much of the body including a hijab. Please don't jump on me if anything I said was ignorant or incorrect about the religion or the names I used. I'm merely trying to paint a picture. I mean no offense and hope none is taken, but polite corrections or constructive comments are always welcome. The family decides to get in the pool. Karen also gets in the pool wearing a shirt and some shorts. The lifeguard. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you will have to get out of the pool. You can't wear that in the water. Karen, excuse me, I pay for the privilege to swim here, and you cannot tell me what to wear. It's a new rule this year. We can't allow people to wear cotton fibers in the water because it messes up the plumbing. What about them? She says disgustedly, referring to the Muslim ladies. If I have to get out, so they should. The lifeguard interrupts her, now realizing she's dealing with a racist. Ma'am, they are wearing swimwear. You are not. We'll see about that. At this point, Karen is now being told by the lifeguard supervisor on duty the same thing. Nice try, Karen. Scene 3. Pizza arrives. There are 4 pizzas, drinks, and breadsticks. Karen gets up and takes the pizza which was paid for. Already, I imagine, as no money changed hands. Not even for a tip. Karen juggles all this to her table and sticks her legs in the water on the side of the pool. Another pizza arrives, and the innocent family is approached by a lifeguard as they were expecting a delivery. The family says no, that isn't ours. We ordered 4 pizzas and drinks and breadsticks from another pizza place. The lifeguard looks around and sees 4 pizzas and drinks and breadsticks on Karen's table. Pretend to be shocked. The lifeguard says to the family, I bet I know who this belongs to. Let me help you. She's thrilled she's going after Karen, the nasty witch. She didn't even say anything. She walked to the table, set the pizza down, and helped the family carry the 4 pizzas and drinks and breadsticks. Karen, excuse me, where do you think you're going with our food? Teeth Eyes Pizza isn't your pizza, ma'am. She has the order on her phone matching the pizza place and the order. Your pizza was delivered a moment ago and is on your table. Karen glances back in confusion, covering her embarrassment. It wasn't even the same damn delivery place. With pure rage, now yelling at the lifeguard and demanding the police be called. The lifeguard, why would you call the police? You have been harassing me all day, and I know you have been staring at my son. I have lived here for years, and I'm going to the Homeowners Association board to have you fired. The lifeguard laughs nervously and turns and walks back to her stand. My daughter has bad anxiety, and for years, she's perfected a stonewall exterior where you think she doesn't care, but she will cry later because she's human. Karen trailing behind and yelling expletives now. Karen proceeds to use her phone camera to video my daughter, hoping to catch her doing what? I don't even know. She's literally paid to watch and scan patrons of the pool. That's most of your damn job as a lifeguard. By the end of the day, The police have been called because Karen insisted the staff was out of line. Karen's disruptive behavior has actually bothered other patrons, mostly the innocent family, as ugly comments about swimwear were overheard and made them uncomfortable. She was following guards and taking cell phone video that actually got Karen and her family kicked out. Many lifeguards are minors, and this made the staff uncomfortable. Not to mention it's ludicrous to be distracting a first responder from their job. Karen did not return to the pool for the remainder of the summer. Not because she was banned. Hopefully she went home and looked in the mirror and was too embarrassed by her behavior.